It's Flying Friday, and I thought I'd take a break from the cartoons and take a look at a documentary, Winged Planet. Now, at times, this felt like it wasn't about migrating birds, so much as the idea of migration was being used as an excuse to cut together pieces of otherwise unrelated footage from around the world to just make a product. This was filled, though, with informative little tidbits, such as a place where the local animals, including the birds, ate the river mud. Apparently, the local food is pretty tough on the stomach, and this soothes them. I found that fascinating. However, the arc of the narration didn't really have any significant beginning or end, and it all felt a bit more like a dry lecture rather than a journey. At 90 minutes, though beautiful, it was a bit long for just one sitting. But for those willing to stay in the classroom, you will be treated to several dazzling displays. There are many locations where numerous blizzard-like flocks of birds gather, which are fascinating in their complexity and, as we will learn, terrifying to predators, terrifying to me. In stereo, it is a terrific sight. However, it's occasionally so dense that it almost becomes bumpy white noise. There's actually too much to see. And the better moments are when we see it from a bit of a distance with something underneath that stays still. Although amazing to see in 3D, I noticed the Blu-ray compression was frequently not up to the task of keeping track of all the bird movement. I found numerous examples of distortion throughout the Blu-ray, especially when seen over trees. Our birds were often in an outline of blocky flutter. Now, the quality of stereo was also a bit all over. As you might expect with natively shot 3D, in nature you really can't call for a retake, and many times the eyes were a bit twisted, and sometimes it seemed like it might even be perhaps a frame out of sync, which my guess is it may have been the speed of the birds combined with the limitations of shutters. Now, I felt no ill effect and really only noticed it on pause. Surprising what our eyes will tolerate. And there's no moment in this movie where I actually felt uncomfortable, though occasionally it did feel a bit weird to watch. Overall, though, I guess my main complaint with the 3D is it was a bit too in the frame. There are some moments that I would have liked to have seen in a more popped out fashion. There is an inherent problem with filming birds in 3D. Stereo is a relative perception. If you have one object on an otherwise blank canvas, such as a blue sky, it is neither close nor far. It is just there. And the more things that enter the frame, the more interesting it becomes for the brain. One of the reasons underwater 3D tends to be a lot of fun is the ever-presence of various particles, dust and debris in the water, which are sort of suspended in place, and it gives it a fun snow globe effect. And no matter where you look in a fishbowl, you can get a sense of relative depth within the picture. Not so in the sky. Air tends to be invisible. So making a satisfying 3D impression of birds is going to be challenging. And unfortunately, this is not a small budget affair. The cameras are rarely filming from the ground up, but rather we see them flying above the birds and pointing downwards, giving us some luxurious background shots. Rome and Venice in particular were interesting to peer down on from the birds' perspective. Within this documentary, the role of birds is often just to lead us to other, bigger animals to look at. Oh, look who we're visiting now on our journey. And I think that a genuine bird lover might actually be a little disappointed by this. However, from a 3D perspective, the large animals, such as these swamp horses, make for a nice stereo diversion. Now, these are hungry birds, and a recurring theme is hanging around predator mammals to feed on the scraps of their kills, and we see plenty of that. Hopefully, you won't have any affection for baby seals. If you can stomach it, the attacking orcas, I think they were, or maybe killer whales, make a very nice 3D splash. There's something about seeing a plane of relatively still water get broken by a big fish missile coming up and out. Sometimes it's suggested that animals are harmonious creatures, only taking what they need as hunger may dictate. That seems to not be the case presented here. It seems most predators kill as a lifestyle, leaving behind a trail of death for scavengers to snack on. And our birds certainly take full advantage of that. Even these turtles, which for those that enjoyed A Turtle's Tale might remember this egg-laying gathering. The birds gather to try and get the eggs, but they don't really need to invade the nest or steal anything. The turtles themselves carelessly dig up and fling around anything that is not theirs. There's no honor among reptiles, no matter how cute they look. If something has two eyes and a mouth, I tend to imagine that somehow, in some way, part of it deep down is just like me. But when you see them carelessly rip each other apart, it gives pause to the idea. Although I suppose there are enough people who act similarly enough that I realize being human is also not a question of compassion. Other people might suggest the difference between animals and people is intelligence, but I don't really think so. If I were a bird, that is, if I woke up and found my sense of self intact, but now a bird, everything I know now wouldn't help me at all. My eyes are unsuitable for TV watching, and my claws can't even touch the buttons on the remote. The only real choice I'd have is, do I wish to be a living bird or a dead bird? Assuming the former, then the only thought worth having from that moment onwards would be how to use that body to get fed and find a nice car to poop on.